Welcome, everybody. We're continuing with the laws of Lashon Harah. We just completed chapter 7, which was dealing primarily with the laws of listening to Lashon Harah. That just like it's prohibited to speak evil about one another, it is also prohibited to listen to evil. Now we're going to go on to chapter 8, which is primarily about on who the prohibition to speak Lashon Harah applies. Who aren't you allowed to speak Lashon Harah about? And we're going to see that there's actually some exceptions where it's permissible to speak Lashon Hara about certain people. Okay, so we start off, halacha aleph, number 1. Ein chelik be'isr sipur Lashon Hara, bein im hamasaper ish o isha. There's no difference if the person you're speaking Lashon Hara about is a man or a woman. Kar v'rachok, whether he's a relative or not a relative. Right? You can't speak Lashon Hara just because someone's a family member. Af dergilas hu kamapam, even though many people are accustomed, even though usually a family member isn't going to be so upset if someone says something negative about him sometimes. He's not going to be so upset if his family member spoke Lashon Hara about him because they're relatives, they love each other. And very often when someone's relative speaks Lashon Hara about another relative, his goal isn't to really denigrate him. He could have just other motivations. He wants to figure out a situation, figure out what was happening, but he doesn't necessarily want to denigrate his family member. Maybe he knows one of his relatives did something bad, and he's just trying to find out what happened. And he figures since he's a family member, there's no issue of Lashon Hara because he has a purpose for what he's doing. So im ta b'dimyono b'zeh, dahainu shemihar lahachlito lekavchov, v'alpi emes lo hayachayev b'zeh, ein davar zeh yos michal Lashon Hara gemura. And he says, let's say that he thought his relative did something, and if you remember, we spoke earlier that when you see anybody do something, and it's a 50-50, you're not sure if they did something wrong or did something right, we have to judge them favorably. So if this guy saw his relatives do something which could be a 50-50, and he's going around telling people what he did, and he's trying to figure out exactly what happened, and really he should have been judging him favorably, that is straight up Lashon Hara. It makes no difference that he is his relative. Okay? Halacha Beis. Number 2. So, in Halacha Aleph, we saw that it is forbidden to speak Lashon Hara about one's relative, and also one's and anybody else. Relatives don't make a difference. Still Lashon Hara. Now we're going to discuss who the Torah prohibited to speak Lashon Hara upon. Isser Lashon Hara hu bein al ish o isha. It's again applies to a man or a woman. You can't speak Lashon Hara about a man or a woman. Doesn't matter. Ve'ein chilek ben ishto leisha acheres. And there is no difference whether it's your wife or somebody else's wife. V'rabim nichshalim b'zeh b'avonos harabim. Many people make mistakes in this. Shehuter beinehem l'saper gunus al ishto. People think that they're allowed to speak Lashon Hara about their wife. Just letting off steam and or complaining about one's wife to somebody else. That's regular Lashon Hara with all the prohibitions that apply, just like to somebody else. Ubeis chosno, or his in-laws. Lifnei achiv ubeis aviv. Right, to speak about his in-laws to his parents and to his brothers. One's not allowed to complain and say bad things about his in-laws. That is regular Lashon Hara. Umedina ein shum nafkamina bezeh, im lo shehu mechavin bezeh latoelas al haba v'lo lignosam v'gam lo yar b'dvarav shum sheker v'chol dino hu kfima shemavur lekamen b'chlal yud so v'gim ve'elach ein sham. Right, he's saying that there is the prohibition of Lashon Hara is exactly the same when it's referring to when someone speaks Lashon Hara about one's spouse and also about one's in-laws. Don't think that just because it's a spouse or because it's your in-laws you have more leeway to speak Lashon Hara. The same rules apply. You're only allowed to speak Lashon Hara if it's litoelas, if it's for a purpose, and with those 7 conditions which we're going to discuss later. Okay, halacha gimel, halacha number 3. Sometimes there's a prohibition to speak Lashon Hara about a kid. Right? People think that they could speak negatively about children. That's not Lashon Hara. That's not true. If you're a teacher and you have a bad kid, you're not allowed to go speak Lashon Hara to denigrate the kid. Obviously, if you have to discuss something with his parents or the principal and there's a purpose of of the speech that you're doing, then that's different. But just to speak badly about a child, that is forbidden. Kigon l'saper genusa shel yasam katan shmegadleno so acherim betoch beisim. He talks about a case where it could be very damaging for a child to speak Lashon Hara about him. Perhaps there's an orphan that's being raised in a house, and you speak Lashon Hara about him. It could cause, your Lashon Hara could make the family who's taking care of this orphan to kick the kid out of the house. Any case where you speak about a child where it would cause him pain or damage, then it's a problem. It's forbidden. It's Lashon Hara. Then he talks about it if it's something which is known about the child, and he cites us to look in other places. But he writes, "V'im mechaven b'sipuro l'salek hanizaken sheboin al yedei zeh hakatan ulahadrich oso b'derech yishar." However, if the reason you're speaking this story about the child is to get somebody to instruct him in the right way, or to protect somebody, or to protect him, then it's allowed. But you have to know that the story is true before you say it. And you shouldn't be quick to rely on this leniency. Meaning, if you hear the story about this child from somebody else, then you should not repeat it. We're going to talk about it later. And he says you have to be very careful about what could happen if you speak the Lashon Hara, the results of the Lashon Hara, even if you're doing it for a purpose. You have to be careful. Meaning that if you're going to say this thing about a child, that you need to correct him and you have to tell somebody about it, but you know that there's going to be an overreaction if you tell somebody what the child did and they're going to throw him out of the house and ruin his life, then you're not allowed to do it, even if it's true and even if you saw it yourself. But it's one of the things we're going to learn when something is litoelis, for a purpose. If there's going to be an overreaction where the person that you're speaking the Lashon Hara about, even though that it's true and even though it's justified and you're doing it for a purpose and you're doing it not to denigrate the person, if the result is because of the people you're speaking to that he's going to suffer more than he deserves and his life is going to be ruined, even then you're not allowed to say it. And the same thing applies to a child. And just the Chavetz Chaim writes that he used the example of an orphan in his scenario because that's the more likely that something damaging could happen, and that's why he used that example of an orphan. But it applies to every child, he said. And he also writes that right where we're just saying that you can't speak Lashon Hara about a child if something bad's going to happen more than he deserves. He writes because sometimes if you talk about a child and like say his parents kick him out of the house or something, or the foster parents kick him out of the house and put him in foster care or something, the kid could be ruined for life. He could wind up in a dangerous situation, or he could hang out with the wrong crowd and bad stuff could happen to him. So that all these decisions when to speak Lashon Hara and when to say something, share negative information, it always has to be done with a very serious judgment, taking into all the factors. And it's always good to speak to a rabbi who knows these laws well. So just to review, we learned that Lashon Hara applies to everybody, applies to men and women. There's no difference if it's a relative, if it's your spouse, your in-laws, and a child. All of the prohibition of Lashon Hara applies to all these people. And God willing, tomorrow we will continue with Halacha Dalet. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.